Welcome to the third class in our series of healthy eating. My name is Lori Inasiu. I am a registered dietitian at Midcoast Hospital, and I'm going to give the mic to the couple other folks that we have here on our team.
My name's Allison Fernald. I'm the outpatient dietitian here at Midcoast. I've been doing this for 35 years. I can't believe it, but anyway, with Midcoast for 17. And this is Lexi.
Hi, I'm Lexi Youngbluth, registered dietitian. I work here at Parkview and also at Midcoast Hospital.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Ferracci. I work upstairs over at the Parkview Family Medicine Primary Care Office. We all made this lecture together, and I learned a lot about nutrition. And this is the how to eat. The first you heard the guideline lecture, and then I did the why and the evidence base, and then we're going to get into, all right, now I know what to do, but how on earth do I do it? I'll do my anecdote now. So the anecdote is when I finally started to learn this stuff and say, all right, I got to go change what I'm eating. Because I'm Italian, I had my white pastas, and I had my cereal every morning and all that stuff. I went to the grocery store armed with my knowledge of, okay, avoid refined carbs, look at fiber, decrease added sugar. My normal 30-minute grocery store trip was 2 hours. I kid you not. My kids are like, Mom, I'm like, no. Apparently peanut butter has added sugar too. Who knew? So you do not need to do it all in one go. Take one thing at a time. But it's 1 aisle at a time, right? But it's a big change when you start really reading these labels and understanding it. So I'm going to let you guys take it away.
Thanks, Dr. Ferracci. We're going to start out. Lexi and I are going to be presenting the majority of the material today, and then Allison will come in at the end and show you a food demo. We do have some blueberry banana smoothies over on the side, so if you haven't gotten one yet and you'd like to try a sample of that, please raise your hand and somebody will come around to bring you a sample of that. So today we're going to be focusing on how to eat. So we've learned about the dietary guidelines for Americans, and just a reminder that those dietary guidelines for Americans are the aim is really to help people understand how to have a healthy dietary pattern in order to prevent diet-related disease. And so it's really more of a health promotion and disease prevention kind of a guideline that we're looking at. We're not looking at specifically how to treat cardiovascular disease, for example, through diet, or how to control diabetes through diet. Those are much more specific topics that we would be happy to talk to you about individually through our outpatient nutrition clinic. But just keep in mind that the information we're sharing with you through these presentations is really just general healthy eating guidelines with the goal of helping you guys become good, informed consumers, understanding what your choices or how your choices of the foods that you're eating can affect your health, and maybe being able to make some changes with the new information that you get. So the objectives and overviews are here. We've got them printed out in your handouts. So in the beginning of your booklet, if you'd like to take a look and review what those objectives are. Then we're going to review the dietary guidelines for Americans. We're also going to help teach you how to read a nutrition facts label. So there's been some changes over the years in the requirements for nutrition facts labels, and the newest iteration is a little bit different than the ones that we've used historically. So Lexi's going to cover that. We'll talk very briefly about dietary supplements. That's a topic that could be its own series, really. We're going to talk about how you can monitor, or not monitor, but just how you can get an idea about serving sizes and portion sizes and kind of what the difference is between those two things. We're going to talk about meal planning and meal prep, which is something that probably most everybody in this room participates in or has participated in at some point in their lives. And this is where we really get to share some of our personal experiences, and we'll be looking forward to hearing from you all about what are some of the tips and tricks that you use at home. We'll talk a little bit about budget saving tips, so how to prepare meals that are cost effective and that won't break the bank, but also are nutritious. And we'll finish up with some tips for eating out and cooking at home and baking at home, and then we'll round out the presentation with a food demo. So the dietary guidelines for Americans, you may remember, well, let's think back to that first class. I think most people here also attended the first class. So you can remember all the way back to March when we discussed the dietary guidelines for Americans. This is just a quick summary of what they are. So we're advocating for people to follow a healthy dietary pattern at every life stage. Now, do we remember what the dietary pattern is as opposed to a diet?
I think it's, you have to have a certain amount of each item on your plate.
Yeah, exactly. So we're looking at making sure that you have certain things on your plate every day. Exactly. Choosing nutrient-dense foods and beverages is another one of the guidelines. And do we remember what the nutrient-dense term, how to define that?
I'm assuming it's, you want the most amount of nutrients to be in the beginning of what you're reading versus a bunch of stuff you don't understand.
So you want the most amount of nutrients, yes, for every calorie that you're consuming. Yes, very good, very good. The dietary guidelines should be customized to reflect your cultural preferences and your food preferences. So, for example, not everybody likes fish, right? So how do you get the nutrients that you find in fish in different kinds of foods to make sure that you have a healthy dietary pattern? Or maybe there's different kinds of seafood or different kinds of fish that you've never tried before that you might actually like. So it's all about customizing to reflect those personal preferences and your cultural traditions, as well as your budget. And then, of course, limiting foods and beverages that are higher in those nutrients of concern, that nutrients that we want to limit in our diet. So that's going to be your saturated fat, sodium, added sugars, not natural sugars, but added sugars. In limiting alcoholic beverages. We didn't talk about that very much, but that's another one of the guidelines. And then including regular activity. So we've gotten some really great feedback from these classes, and we really appreciate you taking your time to fill out those feedback forms and send that in to us so that we can make improvements. And hopefully we've hit the nail on moving around. So hopefully, taking those movement breaks throughout this next presentation, we're hoping that we got it right this time. And so again, that increasing the nutrient density of the foods that you're choosing, that's that ratio of nutrients to the calories that you find in your foods. And this is just a brief list of all of the different food groups and just kind of brief examples of what specifically out of those different food groups would count as nutrient-dense foods. And all of this information is on the MyPlate website. So if you guys want to go home and bookmark that and study it on your own time, then that's a good way for you to find even more detailed information about the food groups and which foods are recommended for each of them. So the general targets are reviewed here, where for fruits, 1.5 to 2 cups a day is what the goal is. And again, remembering that the food groups, the recommendations stem from making sure that Americans have access to an adequate amount of the nutrients that our bodies need every day. And you may remember it from one of our topics or one of our classes that our bodies need at least 40 different essential nutrients every day to function at its peak. And so in order to get all of those 40 nutrients, we have to have a variety of different foods that we're including in our diet every day. And so that's going to include fruits, vegetables, the whole grains. And again, the grains, the emphasis is on at least half of those grains should be whole grains. There's plenty of enriched products on the market, but at least half of your grains should be aimed to be whole grains. 100% would be fine, but at least half. Dairy, the 3-cup equivalent per day. I did want to mention a note about this because not everybody drinks cow's milk, and not everybody drinks soy milk, not everybody drinks,
Almond.
yes, exactly. So there are other sources. The reason why the 3 cups a day is part of the dietary guidelines for Americans is because it's a very calcium-rich food, And so it's easy to meet your calcium requirements through 3 cups of a dairy product every day. Now, if you don't consume dairy products, then there's plenty of other alternatives and places where you can get calcium. So for example, if you have a vegan lifestyle, then you're not going to be eating any animal products, and you'll want to get your calcium from different sources. So really the goal is just is not necessarily the focus on dairy as being included, but the focus should be on getting adequate calcium in your diet. And then the physical activity every week of 150 to 300 minutes of moderate activity with 2 days a week of strength training. So a question that we often get asked is, okay, well, that's great and all, Lori, but then what about my pie? Or what about my ice cream? We're famous for eating ice cream in this part of the world. And all of those things are absolutely fine. We have discretionary calories that we can use. If you use about 85% of your total calorie needs to meet your food group targets and to meet your nutrient targets, then you have about 15% left over for the quote unquote fun stuff. I mean, I think that all of it is fun. So whether it's wheat germ or ice cream, I think that's all fun. But some people feel that there's certain foods that they would love to eat more often, but it's just really not that great for them because it's maybe too high in sodium or maybe it's too high in added sugars. The point of this slide is just to point out that there's room. There's room for all foods. It's an all foods can fit kind of a structure. Okay, so we're going to start with our sugar and fat demo. And we might do a surprise sodium add-on.
Yeah.
Not sure yet. We'll see how that goes.
So, do you want to do it together? Do you want me to do it?
Sure, you go ahead. Okay. You got this.
So this is a visual that we're going to do to kind of point out just how much sugar, how much saturated fat, and as Lori said, we got this great little Five Guys nutrient analysis, and they actually point out their sodium as well. So do you mind holding this?
Yeah.
So we're going to start with a bacon double cheeseburger. That's actually not, they don't call it a bacon double cheeseburger. They don't call it a bacon double cheeseburger because it's just the regular burger. But that bacon double cheeseburger has 77 grams of fat. So if we take that 77 grams of fat and we divide it by 9, that tells us that there are 8, and I'm going to count them out for you, 8.6 teaspoons of fat in that burger. So we're going to take a look at what that looks like.
Why are you dividing it by 9?
So that is how we determine
There's 9 calories for every gram of.
Thank you. So 1, 2. Can you guys see this? Yes. 3, 4, 5, 6.
And keeping in mind this is one burger.
7, 8. So that is just the burger, the bacon double cheeseburger. So now let's add large fries. Large fries, 57 grams of fat. That's an additional 9 teaspoons. 1. Too much? We go too far?
57 divided by 9 is
Okay.
6. 6.
Oh, 6, sorry, I forgot to read all the way over. You're right, 6. Thank you.
Good math.
Thank you.
Are those level teaspoons? Or?
They're not, they are technically, but we're just speeding it up.
Yes?
It's still too much.
When you are determining how much fat, the very first segment that you put in, was that from just the meat itself, the hamburger, and is it the hamburger that has all the fat as opposed to the one that has the smaller amount when you buy it? Hamburger cheese.
This one is just specific to the Five Guys. It's the whole burger with the bun. The bun,
Oh, it includes everything.
yes.
Cheese and the bacon.
The cheese and the bacon, yes.
That makes
Yes. So we have a good idea here, right? And I just want to point out that the sodium in the French fries and the burger, that works out to 2,320. Wait, 2,300. I wrote it down including a milkshake, but it's
57.
it's 2,357 milligrams of sodium. Do you guys remember what the recommendation for a day is?
Yeah, that's your entire day's worth of sodium.
2,300. So now we have had this much fat and an entire day's worth of sodium. So
Just in the burger and fries.
just in the burger and fries. We were going to do a milkshake, but I feel like maybe we should move on to the sugar because
I think you get the point.
I think you get it. Yes. Okay, so now with sugar, I'm going to have to, oh, actually I can just
You need to
use,
wash your hands.
I should, but it's okay.
Here, you know what? If you can hold that for a second, I'll get you a towel.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, for Jessica.
Thank you, perfect.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So now we want to talk about sugar, and we can do the same thing. There's 4 calories in every, am I saying that right? There are, in every
For every
4
teaspoon.
grams of sugar, that is the equivalent of
To a teaspoon.
1 teaspoon of sugar, right? So these represent a teaspoon.
4 pounds per teaspoon?
16 calories per teaspoon. Mhm.
Yes, right. So the first one we're going to look at is a venti 2% white chocolate mocha. That has 15 grams of fat, so 1.7 teaspoons of fat, 330 milligrams of sodium, 74 grams of sugar, which works out to 18 packets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
I don't like my lattes with nothing but this much sugar after that.
So then we move on to like this Monster drink. This Monster drink has 41 grams of sugar. That is equivalent to 10 packs of sugar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mountain Dew. 77 grams of sugar. That works out to 9.
Is that per serving or per that bottle?
It is per serving, which is this entire bottle.
Oh, it is.
But you're right to look to ask that question. So this one has 19 teaspoons of sugar.
A lot of snack foods and beverages switched over, I think it was maybe 5 years ago or so, from labeling 2 servings per bottle to just doing the nutrition facts for the entire bottle. But I don't know that that was a law that every snack food and drink had to do that, so it is still important to look at the label and see how many servings are in the container.
McDonald's large Coke, 100 grams of sugar. That's the equivalent of 25. So here we have 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
Okay.
So that was sort of a demonstration to kind of point out just what is in that food. And maybe not the most appealing one. And it's not meant to like say, you know, you can never have these things. We're just trying to draw attention to how these nutrients of concern can add up. Yes?
There's, all those drinks are made in a diet version, Diet Mountain Dew, Diet Pepsi, Diet Coke.
Yes.
What do you think about diet drinks? Which don't have any sugar, right?
Yes, so we probably all can answer differently. I think that if you are not able to, if you really want to drink that product, you choose the sugar-free version. It is a better choice, and within reason, within moderation.
But isn't it true that the ingredients in whatever product they put in to sweeten it, in many instances, is very bad?
The question is about artificial sugars and whether or not they are really bad. And we actually kind of discussed
this
this question
conversation
yesterday
yesterday.
because we kind of expected it. So the FDA has said and basically they've determined that it's a GRAS product, which means generally regarded as safe. So while there are tests that show, and this is one dietitian's opinion, and maybe other people want to make their thoughts known as well, that basically there are studies out there that show that aspartame, for example, can cause cancer. The amount of aspartame that they were eating for that cancer was extremely high, and not really the amounts that we would be eating. And I like to mention that resveratrol, if you've heard about that, that's in red wine, the same thing. But the opposite, to say that, well, red wine is good for me because it has resveratrol, and that's an antioxidant, so it can help prevent cancer. But the amount of wine that you have to drink in order to get that resveratrol negates all of that beneficial properties. So that's why I say within reason. If you have a Diet Coke once in a while, that's, or a Coke once in a while, that's okay. It's based on personal preference, and there's not a lot of room for there's some room, but not a lot of room, so I wouldn't recommend drinking 5 Diet Cokes a day. Would anybody else like to add to that? Okay. Yes.
Can I just say one thing? My mother, myself, 2 daughters and a granddaughter all have the same problem. The aspartame and sucralose, like the Equal and the Splendor, attacks your nervous systems, and it gives us instant migraines. So if there are any migraine sufferers here, be very, very careful of the sweeteners, because they are triggers. And there's a lot of, I've read a lot of them, there's a lot of surveys, just Google it.
So we don't recommend Dr. Google, but the question here, or the statement here, is about the fact that this family experiences headaches and migraines when they drink Diet Cokes or aspartame or some of the sucralose. And I would say that really what we will talk about in our next class is really kind of that intuitive eating, and people may experience different things with different foods, and it's good to recognize that and to avoid them if you do have problems. What'd you say?
Yep.
Yes, one more question.
Is carbonation in general bad for bone health?
Would you repeat the question?
The question
Is carbonation bad in general for your bone health?
Yes, so I would go and say that we're getting a little into the weeds here. Overall, excessive anything could be bad for a number of things, but carbonation itself is not going to hurt bone health per se. Could it interfere with calcium absorption, then you don't get enough calcium, and that's bad for bone health? Absolutely. But I want to make sure we have time for the rest of the presentation.
Yes,
Really cool things
really.
to show you here. But in general, if it is processed, too much carbonation, too much artificials, too much chemicals, whether they call it natural or not, it's not going to be good in excess. That should be your 15% discretionary. That would be the blanket answer to all those kind of questions.
Yes.
Thanks, Dr. Faraci. Okay, moving right along. So basically, for the overall message of the dietary pattern is to make as many of your bites possible count towards meeting your nutrient needs. And so when you're looking at your overall food choices for the day or for the week, you just want as many as possible of those food choices to be contributing to a healthy dietary pattern with nutrient-dense food choices. And over time, these are not, one of the things that I think dietitians really help people with is making small changes over time. And so you could be starting out where you're making, all very unhealthy choices. Let's say you're not following any of the dietary guidelines for Americans. But when we work with you, we don't say that you need to start doing it all tomorrow. We look for the low-hanging fruit, pun intended, and we look for those changes that would be really easy for you to make so that you can build your confidence, make a few changes that will help make you feel better, help make you feel confident that you can make those changes. And those changes all add up over time. So if you don't feel like you can make all of the changes tomorrow, nobody can, right? So, or somebody can, but then it's the longevity of how that's able to stick and how you're able to follow through with that for a long period of time might be questionable if you do it all at once. Okay, so if you want to know about your individualized targets for the food groups and you want to find out, okay, I want to know how many specifically servings of fruits that I should be eating every day, or how many grams of protein I need every day, then you can go to the myplate.gov website and you can actually put in your information, your activity level, your age, whether you're a female or a male, and then you can calculate your food plan, and it will come up with an individualized plan just for you. And again, this is an individualized plan whose goal is to help you have a healthy dietary pattern to prevent the onset of diet-related disease. The other note is that, and I think I've mentioned this already in this short time that I've been talking, that you can talk to a registered dietitian if you have specific needs. So for example, if you have celiac disease, or if you have irritable bowel syndrome, or you have diabetes, or you have cardiovascular disease, then most of these principles still will apply, but there's going to be some differences within food groups about how we can approach making sure that you have a healthy dietary pattern, that you're getting all the nutrients that you need while still respecting whatever it is that else that you have going on health-wise. There's also an app. So if you have a phone that you'd like to, a smartphone that you want to download the app, you can get all of that information to go. Stretch break.
Basically, we're going to talk about how to read a nutrition label, and probably a lot of you know this already, and it might just be a refresher. But I think we can certainly, hopefully, shed some good information, and hopefully, it won't take you 2 hours at the grocery store. So the first thing to look at when you're looking at a nutrition label is that serving size. And so one serving could be the entire package, or it could be a portion of a package. And so if you are eating that serving size, which on this particular product is 2/3 of a cup, then all of the milligrams and grams that you see apply to that serving size. So that's the first thing to look at. And I guess the question we have is, does anybody know what the difference is between a serving size and a portion size?
No.
Yes.
Okay, so they may say that their serving size is 2/3 of a cup, but for your nutrition plan or whatever, it may say you can only have a half a cup of, say, like the rice or something, rather than their 2/3.
Yeah, so basically, did you have something you wanted to say? No? So basically, a serving size is what is recommended based on the product. The portion size is what you actually portion for yourself. So a serving size is just really what is on the label, and that doesn't mean how much you're eating. So just drawing a connection between, you know, what the label says and really making sure you're paying attention to just how much you're actually eating. So, as we said, first thing is serving size. Then the second thing to look at is the calories, and that applies to that serving size. And calories just mean energy. They're not good or bad, but in general, something that has 100 calories per serving is considered moderate. Something that has 400 calories or more is, you know, on the higher side. And it's not good or bad. These are just, you know, information. And then just a tip is that when you see on the front of a package, if it says fat-free, if it says no added sugars, that does not mean it's calorie-free. So you want to turn it around and really look at those nutrition labels. So then we have percent daily values, and this can be a little bit tricky and really can be a useful tool when you want to think about those nutrients of concern or those nutrients that we want to get more of. And so when you look at saturated fat, sodium, and added sugar, not total sugar, but added sugar, you want to target products that are 5% daily value or less. And so if you're finding products that are 20% or more, then that's on the higher side. You'd want products that had higher in fiber, higher in calcium, those types of beneficial nutrients. But that's just where those percent daily values can come in, and that can be a good way to compare different products. I guess one thing to kind of think about is there's some products that really will never be low in saturated fat. They might be like an ice cream or maybe straight up butter. And that's a choice that you're making. So, you know, you don't have to be perfect all the time, but it's just information is what we're trying to share. And I guess I sort of already shared this about the nutrients to limit. And those, again, are saturated fat, trans fats, sodium, and added sugar. And most Americans are exceeding those recommendations. And diets higher in these nutrients are associated with increased risks of certain health conditions. So
which ones of those do you want to be high?
Those are not the ones you want to be high.
Which ones of what's listed on there do you want to be high? Do you want it to be high?
Next slide, probably.
Fiber is one.
So in the nutrients in general. Well, actually, this particular example doesn't really go into that. It really just talks more about the ones you want to limit. But I did share with you that the ones you wanted more of are fiber and calcium and vitamin. Yeah, the vitamins really.
This label to include every nutrient.
It's not going to include every nutrient. And really, I don't want to get into too much detail about counting the calcium and counting the potassium and the iron and stuff. That's a lot of work. And then we don't want to take the joy out of food in any way. We just want to share those ones that you want to keep an eye on as far as what to limit. But yeah, really, you could be there all day just trying to get a grocery list for a few days, and that's just really not fun. So, you know, it's kind of that tool that you can apply when you're comparing products. So the nutrients to limit, this hopefully isn't confusing. The saturated fat is 10% or less of your total daily intake of calories. So total calories per day, 10% or less of saturated fat, 0% in trans fats, cholesterol, 200 milligrams a day, sodium, 2,300 milligrams, and added sugar, 10% or less. And again, this is just a, kind of reminder that these are generally ones we're over consuming. And then the ones we want to get more of, I was mentioning the dietary fiber, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. Some of these are nutrients of concern, and diets that are higher in these can reduce the risk of developing things like cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, anemia, and high blood pressure. So then reading the actual ingredients, and I think many of you already know about this, but the ingredients are listed in their quantities. So as you read the ingredients, they would be whatever has the most in a product, and then that would be down to whatever has the least amount in a product. So with this particular product, it says enriched unbleached flour. And so this is not a whole grain product. In order to determine whether it would be a whole grain product, you want that very first ingredient to say whole. And then it is a whole grain, you can be sure of that. So now we have a little activity. Are you gonna help me with this activity? Some of you have on your desk, or on your chair rather, you have an ingredient. It might look like this. And so if you don't want to participate, maybe you can get your neighbor, pass it along. But we have
Okay. So if you did get one of those laminated copies on your chair, then go ahead and read it. And if you have a grain product, stand up.
a grain, yes.
If you have a grain product, stand up. Okay, great. So I would like you to read the ingredient list to yourselves. Okay. And then I'm going to go around the room and have you each read off the first, let's say the first 3 ingredients.
We'll start here.
Okay, let's start here. What are your first 3 ingredients?
Whole grain rolled oats, sugar, natural and artificial flavors.
Can you show what you have?
Okay, what product do you have? It's an instant oatmeal?
Yeah.
So is that a whole grain product?
Yes.
Because? It said whole. Good. Okay. How about yours? What does yours say? The first 3 ingredients.
Whole wheat flour, unbromated, unbleached, enriched wheat flour, and then in parentheses it's got all kinds of stuff. Do we need to read all that?
Nope.
No.
Okay, good.
Okay. And what product do you have?
I have Beverage Farm, Farmhouse Whole Grain White. White?
So is that a whole grain product?
And if he was.
The first word was
ingredient,
whole.
but-
It's the first ingredient and it says whole. So it is, yes. How many grams of fiber are in it?
Just 3.
3 grams per slice is pretty good.
Oh, all right. Well, I
Yep.
don't buy it.
Yes, so they figured out how to make white flour into a whole grain.
So the
Or
first
whole grain
ingredient is
into a white
whole
flour.
grain. How much- That is white?
Mhm.
The color of the wheat.
It's the color of the
grain
wheat.
is
Mhm.
the color of the grain is wheat. Like when you see quinoa and you see red ones and you
Yeah.
see white ones.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
now they have wheat that's white, right?
Well, I don't eat wheat anyway. so-
Tricky. Very tricky. Okay. Coming right around to you, madam. What are your first 3 ingredients?
Unbromated, unbleached, enriched white flour is the first one. Then they have 7, in parentheses, 7 things for flour?
Those are all the vitamins that are added. Yep.
And raisins, water, high fructose corn syrup.
Okay, and what is your product?
It's raisin cinnamon bread.
How much fiber?
Not whole wheat.
How many grams of fiber?
1.
In
One.
one
Okay,
slice or
and
2.
so is this a whole grain product?
No.
No, good, because it doesn't have the word what? Great, okay, you got it.
Hey, we learned
And less fiber.
What are your, and less fiber, what are your 3 first ingredients? You can show if you want, yeah.
So this is a good one.
Yeah.
So it's enriched wheat flour, water, and sugar.
And what's the product?
What is it?
Multi-grain bread.
What color is it?
So, now, the other ingredients are sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, oats, rye, barley, corn, millet, treacle, rice flour, flaxseed, buckwheat. Those are what gives it 3 grams per serving of
But
fiber.
is it a whole grain?
No.
Right, but this is a good point because it could be a healthy choice because it's got all those additional nuts and seeds added to it. So again, this is an information, like how do you read the label? How do you make a choice about whether you're going to choose this food or not? And does it meet the criteria for a whole grain? No, it doesn't, but it's a good product still potentially.
3 grams, it's
Yeah.
So
better
what
than
is
some.
it? Is it a drink?
It's a multi-grain.
It's a multi-grain bread.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Multi-grain bread.
Mm-hmm.
And so 1 slice contains 3 grams of fiber.
Because it's got the nuts and seeds added to
It's
it.
got the seeds in it.
Yep. Yep. Thank you.
That was a good one.
That was a good one. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Unbleached enriched wheat flour, water, and sugar.
Okay. How many grams of fiber?
1.
Okay. Is this a whole grain product?
No.
And this is what?
Arnold's Country Oat Bran bread.
And it looks pretty grainy in the picture. So it's got all the flakes of oats on the top.
It'd be interesting to know how much sugar.
So sometimes, is this a whole grain product? It's not, because it doesn't have the word whole. Okay. We got one more. Okay, what are your first 3 ingredients?
Unbleached enriched flour, riboflavin, and whole wheat grain flour.
Uh-oh.
This much or this much?
It's not.
How many grams of fiber?
1.
Yes.
1 gram of fiber. What's the product?
It is wheat crackers made with whole grains.
Oh, boy.
Made with whole grains. It is telling you, but it is
So
not.
it's partly a whole grain, but the first ingredient is not whole grain. So this might be one of those cases where you compare this label to another similar product and you see, okay, well, which one has a better nutrient profile? Maybe this one comes out on top because it has a whole grain added to it, whereas, you know, maybe the plain butter cracker does not. So this is where reading the label and being informed and taking 2 hours at the grocery store can help you. And you know, to Dr. Faraci's point about being in the grocery store for a long time, you may be there longer than you had been at first, but people usually buy and eat roughly the same things over and over again. So once you figure out what you're normally eating and what you normally pick, it doesn't take so long anymore. There's a little bit of a learning curve. I have a question over here. Thank you. Go ahead.
Summarize the 1 versus 3 grams of fiber, and then like, what was it, 17 grams of sugar in the instant oats, just want to, thank you. So some of the patterns you might have, and I'd use this trick too, is like, all right, is it actually a whole grain? Are they freaking it out? Look at the first ingredient, but also that fiber content is going to let you know the oat grain. If there's only 1 gram of fiber, they're faking you out somewhere. There's just not enough fiber in there. If you're getting to 3, that's more real. I have had trouble finding a bread with 5 grams or more, so please give me some tips. But
Dave's Killer.
Dave's, okay, Dave's Killer. I just found them recently, and I did find a 5, right? Dave's Killer. It's hard to find some of them, but keep on looking. And then I'm gonna
Ezekiel's
borrow
in the
yours.
frozen section.
And then, you know, this, okay, maple brown, you know, instant oatmeal, and although, yeah, 3 grams of fiber, 12 grams of sugar in this instant oatmeal, right? So that's when they shoot, all right, I got my fiber, but I just negated it with all the added sugar. So make sure you look at that as well. Lower sugar better, definitely not above 10.
It
Yes,
should be.
one more question.
It's not a question,
Oh.
but this is a really good tip. Just do the math, okay? You want to have 5. Take the total carbohydrates, divide it by the fiber, and if that's a 5 or less, you have a whole food.
So you take the total grams of fiber, you divide it by 5,
No, divided by what the fiber is.
what the fiber is.
So in my
Total
case
carbohydrate.
right here,
Total calories divided by the grams of fiber.
total carbohydrates divided by the fiber, in this case right here, it comes out to be 7.
Okay.
We want it to be 5 or less.
I have not heard that before.
It's a really simple
Yeah,
way.
we
It's
can,
a
we
really-
can check on, we can do some follow-up on that and check that out, but it seems like that could be
It's just a really
one way to do
simple way.
it.
You don't have to look at the ingredients, you don't have to look at the calories, you just do the math, and if it's a 5 or less.
Well, we're.
It depends though, because if you're concerned about the ingredients in your foods, which I mean, I think we all should be concerned about what we're putting into our bodies, then you do still want to look at the ingredient label and see exactly what it is that is being, put into that food that you're eating. There's a lot of preservatives that are there because they have to be there to keep the food shelf stable. But there's other ingredients that it's kind of like, well, can I get a food that maybe doesn't have these, like high fructose corn syrup? Can I get something that doesn't have high fructose corn syrup in it? Or, a bunch of different kinds of added sugars, like a brown rice sugar and a this and that sugar. And there's, I think it's still worth looking at the ingredients label to really have an idea of what it is exactly that you're putting into your body. And using that complete information will really help to make sure that you have all of the information you need to make a good choice. Because there are some products that are high in fiber, but it's like inulin. It's some kind of or chicory root or some kind of added fiber that's not naturally occurring in that food. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but I would much rather see somebody getting fiber that's naturally occurring in a food than fiber that's been added to a food. So I think it's important to look at the whole picture. Yes.
I just want to add in that the vitamins and minerals are in their whole form. That's the reason for the whole, the visual that Lexi brought in with the styrofoam ball wrapped in the burlap. That's the reason for you wanting it whole, because when it's whole, it's got the essential vitamins and minerals, selenium, magnesium, and they're in the natural form. So they're going to be absorbed better than they would be if they were done in a chemical form, like in a supplement or an additive. Exactly.
Yeah, good point.
Sorry, what was your question?
Good point. One last question.
Can you
Yep.
help? I find it confusing when they talk carbs, but then they'll say 18 grams of carbs, but then it says net 3 grams.
Right, yes. Yeah, that's a good question too. You might, yeah. So to my knowledge and my awareness, net carbs is not, it's not a regulated term. It's a term that the diet industry came up with. And so it's not a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not an accepted term that we use in the medical community. It's kind of something that came out of
Carbohydrate
counting for diabetes, exactly. So what's important to look at on the label is your total grams of carbohydrates, okay? The net carbs thing is,
It's extra math.
It's extra math. Yeah.
If you were having to do an insulin to carb ratio, then technically you'd have to subtract out if it's 5 or more to know how many units of insulin to give yourself. But from a practical standpoint, for the majority of people here, just know that the higher the fiber, the better the food for the majority of people.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
don't think
thank
we
you.
want to be
Good question.
counting carbohydrates if we don't have diabetes.
Yeah, I don't.
Yes, and we don't need to count carbohydrates if we don't have diabetes, right? Exactly. Okay, so moving on to dietary supplements. I'm not going to spend very much time because, like I said, there's so much information about dietary supplements, and there's so many different kinds of dietary supplements that we're just, we would need a whole other lecture to do this. I used to lecture on this when I was in the Air Force because a lot of our military members would take supplements with the goal of either getting bigger muscles or losing weight or having more energy, to stay up for their shifts and that sort of thing. So we did do a lot of education around this topic, but I think what's important for the general public to know about dietary supplements is that it's an unregulated industry. So in 1994, there was the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act was passed. It simply stated that there has to be a couple things on the label included. these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. You've probably read something like that before in very tiny writing. And so unlike drug products, dietary supplements do not need to go through rigorous testing before they reach the market. I did actually see a video once of somebody making a dietary supplement in their basement. And just like with a, like a fancy label machine and, fancy little looking bottles and stuff. And that's really all you have to do in order to get these things to market. Now, it's on the onus of the consumer to report if there's been adverse events. And if there's been enough adverse events using a particular supplement, then the FDA has to investigate, and then that product might be removed. And there have been a number of products that have been removed from a market. But I think that the best advice that I have about dietary supplements is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Be wary about dietary supplements. If you want more information about specific supplements, the Office of Dietary Supplements at NIH.gov is a wonderful resource. Your PCP would be another person who would be really important to make sure that you run that past them before you take it. Yep. Or if you are taking a supplement, make sure that they know, because there can be supplement drug interactions that you may not be aware of that could really wreak havoc on your internal systems, especially if there's been liver toxicity issues, and because that's the clearinghouse that takes all the toxins out. And so it's really important to just be aware and have a conversation with your provider before you take a dietary supplement.
I was going to ask you about the interaction with drugs.
Yeah.
Would that be on the website, the NIH
It is.
website, or do we have to bother our PCP?
Nope, it'll be all on there. Yep.
I'll answer that as a PCP. This is such a large industry. Even when I sit down and try to do the research, most PCPs are overwhelmed and will kind of give you, well, I don't know about that, be careful kind of answer. Some are maybe better educated than others. That website is good, but it does not have every supplement and all the interactions, and so just a lot is not known. So that's where the be careful really comes out. If I'm really worried, and I have some people on 20 supplements, and I'm like, whoa, I can't figure this out. Sometimes there are clinical pharmacists. We used to have one, but not right now. But you can try to sit down with a clinical pharmacist, and they're the ones that can go dive into the literature and look at every interaction with the drugs and the supplements. So if you have a long list and want help, we'll probably send you to a clinical pharmacist. They are hard to find. It's a short answer.
So if I went to CVS and asked my pharmacist, I wouldn't necessarily.
You'll get some. Those are the retail pharmacists that sell you things, and they'll give you some advice. They're supposed to sit down for 5 minutes, and they can be quite good. But you'll get variable level of detail, and they can't sit down with you for 30 minutes and really go through the evidence with you. Okay. If you need that deeper dive, that's a clinical pharmacist, and again, they're harder to find. But retail pharmacists are a great first stop. They might even know more than I do.
Yes.
Okay, so in general, we can get all of the nutrients, micronutrients I'm talking about. So when I talk about supplements, we're including all the different things, like the herbals, the vitamins, the minerals, the carnitine, the coenzyme Q, all those things that are supplementary. As far as the micronutrients that we know that our body needs, we can get all of those micronutrients from the foods that we eat, as long as we're following a healthy dietary pattern and we're including foods from all the different food groups. One thing to be aware of is that in Maine and New England, vitamin D can be a concern. So if you feel like that might be something that you want to take a supplement, definitely discuss that with your primary care provider so that they can test you and see if it's really indicated. You don't want to take a fat-soluble vitamin like vitamin D when you don't need it, because it can build up in your body and become toxic. So it's really important to make sure that you have the information that you need and that you discuss it with your primary care provider so that you don't run into trouble down the road. Yeah. Okay, moving on to serving sizes. So there's lots of different ways that we can monitor or measure portion sizes or serving sizes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through all the different food groups using the hand. And so the hand is a handy tool that everybody has attached to their body. So you don't have to carry around a deck of cards or a ping pong ball or a golf ball or a tennis ball or any of those other things, because you always have your hand with you. So generally speaking, a fist size is about a cup. A half of a fist is about a half of a cup. A cupped hand is about a quarter cup. So if you're going to scoop up your dried fruit or your nuts or something like that, about a half a cup. And so all of the following slides will show you the serving sizes that are, or the portion sizes that are recommended for each of the different food groups in relation to a hand. I think there's actually one typo on here. If somebody finds that typo, raise your hand so that I can give you a kudos. So for fruits, 1.5 to 2 cup equivalents per day. So that might be, I don't know, like maybe you have an orange with your breakfast. That would be 1. And then maybe you have a pear later on in the day, or you have a cup of berries on some yogurt or something like that. And so then you've got your 2 cup equivalents done there, just like that. For vegetables, 2 to 3.5 cup equivalents. This is where it gets a little trickier because we don't typically eat vegetables with all of our meals, but this is where I advocate that you try to figure out a way to have vegetables at breakfast, because then you just have 1 serving with each of your meals and you get everything that you need. So for meat and poultry and other protein foods, again, that quarter cup nuts and seeds, about a little scoopful with your hand. The peanut butter, 2 tablespoons. If you put your 2 thumbs together, that's about 2 tablespoons. So 1 thumb would be 1 tablespoon. Good math. Palm of hand is about 2.5 ounces. So I have had patients in the past say, but wait a minute, my hand is so much bigger than, my teenager's hand, or my wife's hand, or my significant other's hand, or something like that. And that is true. Different hands are different sizes, but your bodies are also different sizes, right? And so even if it is not, this is approximations, first of all, and even if it's not exactly 1 cup, the fist size is the right size for you and for your body. Did anybody find the typo? Yes. Good. Yeah, so legumes, it says a half a cup for 1 fist. It's supposed to be 1 cup.
Where do pickles come in?
Where do pickles come in?
They're not considered
Well,
a vegetable.
it's not considered a vegetable. It's a condiment. Yeah, they come from a vegetable. They're high in sodium typically, unless you get the lower salt versions. They would be considered a condiment. Yeah, they don't fit in a particular, they don't have a nutritional value to offer.
No, we're talking about
Pickles. Pickles, sorry. I should have repeated that question.
This is maybe not for here, but how about fermented foods? How do they fit in with all of this? They're all different things, but the process gives them different qualities.
Yeah, fermented foods. At this time, there's not a food group that addresses fermented foods, so you would just put the fermented food into whatever food group the food would have normally been in. And then the benefits of the fermentation process would make it it would have a different nutritional impact.
If you ate a cup of coleslaw sauerkraut, though, it would be probably high. If you ate a cup of sauerkraut, which is cabbage, it would count as a vegetable. But again, if you didn't make it from home, you want to watch the sodium content on that type of stuff.
Okay, so again, these are all in your packets, so you can take a look at the specifics for each of the different food groups. One part that I did want to mention was about the oils. So the serving size is 1 tablespoon. When Lexi measured out the Crisco, she was using teaspoons. So does anybody know how many teaspoons are in a tablespoon? 3. 3, good, yes, exactly. So 1 tablespoon or 3 teaspoons of added oils every day is what's recommended. That's it. I know. So on that point, if you're starting out at 10 teaspoons a day, let's say you keep a food record and you discovered this about your eating habits, you're starting out at 10, well, maybe next week you can try for 8, and then maybe the week after that you can try for 6. And you can gradually decrease until you get to the point where you're at that goal of 3 teaspoons or less. Or, yes, 3 teaspoons or less. Yes?
If you take a supplement like fish oil, should that be included in your calculation for your daily intake, or are we talking just for nutrition?
I don't think so. It's too small of an amount. How many, it would depend, that would be a good question for, if you had an individualized session with a dietitian, because it would depend on how many of the gels that you take in a day. But if you're just taking a couple of them, I wouldn't bother to add it. Yep. And so again, we come back to the dairy discussion where 3-cup equivalents a day. Again, the goal is to get that adequate calcium and vitamin D, which you can get from other foods, but again, the dairy products are the easiest to be able to get what you need in small portion sizes. What about snacks? Well, snacks are part of a healthy diet, and if you feel like you're hungry in between your meals, this is a great opportunity for you to add some more vegetables, or add some more fresh fruits, or add an extra whole grain that you didn't have before. And by pairing a carbohydrate with a protein food, you can help to increase your satiety. Does anyone know what that word means? Exactly. That's a resounding answer. Yes. So satiety is basically your fullness and your satisfaction with whatever it is that you've eaten. Okay, another stretch break. So briefly, we'll talk about meal planning and meal prep. The first step in meal planning, of course, is to search your fridge, freezer, and cupboards and figure out what you already have. So it's best to make sure that you don't buy 12 cans of beets because you don't realize you already have 12 cans of beets in your cupboard. So making sure that you know what you've got before you make your list is important. Writing out your meals for the week. It includes your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. Considering the amount of time that you have to prepare meals, this is something that we do in our house on Sundays usually, and we look forward to the week. I have 2 teenage boys who are involved in a lot of things, and so we need to consider, okay, well, what are we going to do on that day when so-and-so has to go to the track meet, and what are we going to do on this day when you're not going to be home until later? And so making sure that you have kind of an idea of what's happening for the week will really help to inform how you shop. Which can help you save money if you're planning, and it can also help make sure you're meeting the dietary guidelines and you're achieving a healthy dietary pattern within over the course of the week. Making a plan for leftovers is important too. Sometimes you can make recipes that you can, well, we'll talk about that later, sorry. Meal planning, step 3 is to make your grocery list and shop. Make a grocery list, make a grocery list, make a grocery list. This is really important because you get into the grocery store. I mean, even with a grocery list, I end up buying more than I was supposed to. But when you have a grocery list, it will keep you on target and make sure that you have what you need to implement your dietary meal plan for the week. Canned and frozen fruits and vegetables. It's important to know that they're picked and packed at their picked and packed at the peak. That was unintentional. They were picked and packed at the peak of their freshness. And so using those products is a really good way to have the things on hand when you need them so that you can just pull them out of the freezer or pull them out of your cupboard. Choosing the canned vegetables that are low sodium or no salt added, and choosing the fruits that are canned in their own juices are the best ways to assure that you're not getting too many added sugars or sodium. So again, you save money by creating your meal plan. You're going to save time by creating your meal plan. Even though it's a little bit of time up on the front end of it, you got to sit down, you got to talk to your other person who lives with you and figure out, okay, well, what do we want to have? Who's going to be in charge? How are we going to make this so that everybody gets a chance to implement their healthy eating pattern? So you can help regulate hunger cues. This can improve intuitive eating, which we're going to talk about in the next class.
Sure.
Okay, here's Lexi.
We're just going to try to blast through this, so sorry if it's a little bit rushed. But just basically, really quickly on food storage, you want to refrigerate things after 2 hours. And the bacteria danger zone, that's between 40 degrees and 140. So that's like room temperature. Warmer days are certainly, more concerning. Probably food shouldn't be left out for more than an hour on those days. And you really don't need to wash your produce in any kind of soap, but just water is helpful to kind of clean off some of the pesticides or even just bacterias and stuff. And leftovers are generally safe if they're eaten within 3 to 5 days, especially if they're cooked all the way through. Yes?
What about rice and bacteria?
You know what? I've tried to look that up so many times and I have never found any conclusive evidence. That is like a Google pop-up that comes up all the time. The question is, what about rice and bacteria? And I have never found anything. I've never heard of anybody getting sick off of cooked rice that's kept in their fridge. So I think that's one of those things. Same with that banana pop-up that you get on your Google all the time, how bananas are so bad and we shouldn't be eating them. Those are meant to just grab your attention and scare you. So I wouldn't pay much attention to that. So there's different types of meal prep, just to kind of keep your head in mind with this. You can fully cook your meals in advance and refrigerate them for future use. We have this egg dish that hopefully some of you tried. That is totally, you can put that in your freezer, pop it out, and you can use that for breakfast. You can use that as a snack or just something you can have on hand. That's one way. And we were going to share ideas, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of time for that. But maybe afterwards, if people want to share ideas, this is a great opportunity for us all to learn some tips from each other. So batch cooking, that would be when you cook a big batch of something like a soup or a stew, and then you kind of portion that out and then put that in your freezer. That's another way to think about, like in my house, we make a lot of muffins, and then I put those in the freezer, and they're good snacks for my kids' lunches or snacks or my own, and so that's something we use very frequently. And then portioned meals, where you actually make like 5 salads and put them in the freezer, and there's all your lunches that are already ready, or your dinners, or breakfast as well. You can have those already ready, you just grab them out, like those overnight oats, things like that. And then ready prepared ingredients. So this is another kind of like the frozen fruits and vegetables in the cans, where it can really be helpful. You don't have to, cut up the broccoli and wash it. It's already frozen. But this, you can do the same thing with, kind of prepping. Like if you need onions, chopped onions for one recipe, you could cut them ahead of time and then use them the next day as well. Or garlic. I had someone in the office the other day who crushes all her garlic, puts it in the freezer, and then pulls it out when she needs it. You can also buy that at Trader Joe's, I believe, already done for you. Yes, yeah, you can buy that too. So those are great handy tips, and just to make it faster for you. So we were going to create a grocery list, but you do have in your packet this, and I really want to point out that it includes snacks on that game plan. So, really thinking about what those snacks are, because as Lori mentioned, those are an opportunity to increase your nutrient density with the foods that you're eating. And so those are great opportunities to add protein or fruits or vegetables or whole grains, all of those types of foods. I guess really quickly we'll go into like tips for cooking and baking. So you can reduce your added sugar with fruits. So using like pureed applesauce, mashed bananas, even dried fruits can be really helpful. So the sugar in a recipe does add some properties to your baking, but you oftentimes can cut it in half and substitute that with something else or eliminate it altogether. So something to experiment with. And then you can reduce your saturated fat. I do this all the time. So if a recipe calls for a cup of butter, you could use 3/4 of a cup of oil and a tablespoon of yogurt, and that will be the equivalent. So that's going to give you less saturated fat. Uh-oh. Hello? Uh-oh. Oh, great. All right, now we're going to be yelling, so. So then you can also think about ways with your baking and even in your cooking to increase whole grains. Like maybe you use panko as a filler in your meatloaf. Well, instead of panko, you could use oatmeal. Same with like burgers or, any types of there's lots of opportunities to use whole grains instead of, your refined grains. And then you can also increase fiber by, adding grated carrots. I think, I don't know if we talked about it yet, but if we didn't, we will soon. But kind of thinking about your recipes and that meat that is your dominant, maybe historically has been sort of like what's been dominating our plates, thinking about just cutting back on that and adding more vegetables. So if you're making a stew, using less beef and more carrots and celery and beans and those types of things are really not going to change your flavor that much. Using cooking spray instead of straight up oils and butters. Using ground turkey, chicken, or soy crumbles for half the meat. And then this is kind of going on to what I was saying is, like when you make mac and cheese, instead of mac and cheese, add cauliflower, add broccoli, add carrots. You can really get creative there and really not impact the flavor. And maybe hopefully, increase your pleasure too. So we sort of talked about this. Instead of creams, you can use like potatoes or potato flakes. You can use herbs and seasonings instead of salt, and then increasing, those vegetables again, like we said, this is kind of a repeat. So tips for budget savings. Really the main things here is making that plan. Like we said, that's really going to help to save money. Planning for leftovers. Leftovers are a great opportunity. My kids always want me to watch this show about, it's some sort of leftover competition where people take the leftovers and turn them into some gourmet meal. I mean, there's an opportunity there. You don't have to eat them exactly the way they were. You could, kind of turn them into something else and get creative. Or just put them, in the microwave, and that's a, 2-minute meal right there. It's done, already made for you. And then we talked about this in terms of increasing nutrient density, but also vegetables like carrots and things like that are much less expensive than meat. So when our grocery is filled with a lot of meat products, that can get very expensive. But the vegetables are usually much less expensive. So again, filling up more on those vegetables can help to save money too. And then unit pricing. So if you had a bag of carrots, if you had carrots on your chair, maybe you could stand up and we could kind of compare the carrots that are out here. So I have a bag of whole carrots, and my unit price on the carrots is $1.49 per unit. and that's per a 1 pound bag.
So mine is $3.18 a pound for shredded carrots.
So shredded carrots are $3.18 a pound. And how much was your bag of carrots? The whole bag.
Oh, $1.99.
So $1.99, but per, what did you say, per pound? $3.18. Mine's $1.49 per pound.
Mine's 70 cents.
So here, right here, we have whole carrots. They're not in a bag. Can you show everybody what you have? So she has just whole loose carrots, and those are 70 cents a pound.
So the retail price is $3.29 for whatever.
But the retail price is a 5 pound bag, I guess, at $3.49. And then did you have some too?
Retail price is $1 for 1 pound, and the unit price is 96 cents a pound.
And what do you have?
Crinkle cut carrots from
The freezer? Are they in the freezer?
yeah,
So his frozen carrots were how much per pound? 96 pounds. Since mine were $1.49.
70 cents.
And yours were 70 cents. So when you look at that unit pricing, even though the actual price of the product is different, right? Mine's $1.49, hers are $3.49, his are $1, and yours worth $1.99. If we buy that 5 pound bag at $3.49, we're only spending 70 cents per pound for those carrots. So that is where that unit pricing can be very helpful for saving money.
You also have to think, is buying the bigger bag worth it unless you're not gonna eat it all within 2 or 3
Yeah, we don't want to create any more waste. So we don't want you to buy, carrots last forever. You can put them in the fridge, they last a really long time. But yes. Celery that you can buy by the stalk, and sometimes that's really helpful because you don't really use celery all the time, but these are just another piece that you can look at. Is there a question back there?
I was just going to say, like devil's advocate, if maybe carrots are easier for you to grab and eat as a snack, if like you were paying a little bit more for a bag of baby carrots.
If you pay 70 cents per pound for that bag, but you never eat the carrots because it's too much work to cut them and peel them, then you should buy the whatever form it comes in that's much easier for you and will help you to eat it. Stocking up when items are on sale. All of the grocery stores around here have apps where you can find whatever coupons that they have that are available, and it's not like the old days where you had to take your coupons up to the cash register and count them out. It's all done through the app. When you put your phone number in, it all just comes right off your bill. I've seen $25 savings sometimes, so I would recommend that. Shopping in season can be helpful, and then foodhero.org is a great resource for recipes. They are all recipes that are very budget friendly and have good amounts of fruits and vegetables and whatnot. I guess the last thing was just looking, when you go out, looking for items that are like baked, broiled, grilled, poached, steamed, boiled or roasted. And if you're not sure how something's cooked, to ask. That can be ways to cut back on those nutrients of concern. And then picking sauces made from vegetables versus cream sauces. That can be really important. Ask for those dressings or sauces on the side. That's very common, not a problem. Start your meal with a salad, and you can ask for a to-go box before you even start eating if you feel like that would be helpful. And now we are at our food demo, so we sort of rushed it. If anybody has any questions, I'm really sorry if that was a little bit faster. We'll certainly be here, and you can ask us those questions directly. But I'll turn it over to Allison.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being patient with our getting used to doing food demonstrations, because this is really a first for all of us to take the. Yeah, we're doing as best we can. We're going to make veggie egg muffins.
Hopefully you all got a chance to try those. If not, then there's plenty more samples. Maybe you could have another one even.
Yeah, I did food demos probably about 20 years ago for Senior Spectrum. And so it's been a while to get the timing just right. Last night I was practicing and making them to make sure I'd have enough time to do it this time. So this is the shredded cheese, and I bought some Cabot's 50% light. One other recommendation I've seen in videos on cardiac health is to use like an aged hard cheese and just use less of it. And that's another approach because the aged hard cheese has a nice strong flavor to it. And so then you can use a little bit less of it, so you'll get less of that saturated fat and sodium. And it's about a half a cup, so I'm gonna, what do you think? I think that's about a half a cup. All right, we're good. So I got all my ingredients ready last night.
Cheese is does have significant amount of sodium, so you might want to read those labels on the cheese.
And I found that out about milks too. Like a cup of soy milk had about 80 and a cup of cow milk had about 125 for the milligrams of sodium. And people, 125 milligrams in 1 cup of cow milk is what it said. I think it was 125. Yeah, if it's less than 200, like Lexi's saying, both are considered low sodium choices. People are always asking us, what kind of butter should we use? One of the prior participants here mentioned some coconut oil used as a meltable plant-based spread that I can get behind. There was about 5 grams of saturated fat in a tablespoon. And then this one is just the Land O'Lakes. It's half butter, half olive oil. It's the one that Lexi and I like to use.
I definitely recommend the Land O'Lakes. It's olive oil and sea salt. The ingredients here are sweet cream, olive oil, and salt. So this is a good option and a good substitute to like actual butter. And I don't know about the Yokos. That's a oat milk butter.
Yeah, and they have other butters too that were coconut. Anyway, all right. So we're gonna put in a half a cup of onion.
Half cup of onion.
1 cup of chopped red pepper, red bell pepper. Red peppers and orange and yellow peppers have a little more vitamin and mineral content than the green ones from what I've read. The brighter the color, one way to think of all food should be thinking about lots of color.
Greens are color.
Greens are color. Yep, greens are. And last night when I was prepping this to practice, I didn't have any broccoli on hand. I had leftover cabbage from the sauerkraut, so I put in a bunch of shredded cabbage instead of the broccoli, and that can be done. Anything you have in your vegetable bin, this is a good recipe to think about that. Pull open your vegetable bin drawer. And so this would be sauteed for about 5. The recipe called for about 5 minutes. I did mine for about 10 because I like them soft. But if you like your vegetables al dente, then you can just do them that way. This is 7 eggs. And then this is a half a cup of pre-measured, I used soy milk just to see how it would taste and come out compared to cow milk, and I liked it just as well. And that's 1/2 cup. And I get the regular, like, unsweetened soy. And then for seasonings, they call for some salt and pepper. Those could certainly be added if you want something a little different. This one's a chili chipotle powder. I'll just sprinkle a little of that in. This one's marjoram. I'll sprinkle a little of that in. All ready to make an omelet. It's like, nope, gotta follow the recipe. One of the things I do to just save a step, the muffin tins, called for spraying. Sometimes I don't have cooking spray on hand, so what I do is I just take some olive oil, I put it onto a paper towel, and then I wipe the inside of the cups. And again, I did that last night, and it worked pretty well. Say again? I could use the Crisco, yeah. That would stick perfectly. I think that's a great idea. Why waste all that trans fat? There we go. Everything in moderation, right? And I'll tell you, you cannot make a whoopie pie without Crisco.
I've never tried. I've done without.
You have?
Yeah.
So if it's all butter, it's just as good. Or coconut oil, you could use, at least it would be plant-based, right?
For what?
Whoopie pies. All right.
Oh, no, we don't know.
Oh, so once that's cooked down, what you do is you take the vegetables. I don't know. Is the camera? Yeah, the camera's working. And you just put a little bit into the bottom of each tin.
You can also use frozen vegetables for this recipe. It'd be time saving.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I've seen like Asian chopped vegetables. Very easy. And then you take the cheese. And you put a little sprinkling of the cheese on top of each of the cups. Yeah.
Just save your.
All right. Good idea. Much quicker. I know I'm like trying to be food safety, but I'm like, I'm going to be the one eating all this. So, and I did wash my hands before I started. And then you drizzle the egg in over the top.
Yes. And you can put them, these will freeze, and you can have them, you know, take them out of the freezer and defrost them or put them in the toaster oven. I have tried this recipe where I mixed everything in the bowl and then put it in. I don't recommend that. It definitely changes the consistency of it, and it's much better to layer it the way Allison has done that.
And then these go into a preheated oven for 23 minutes. The recipe said 20. It said you could do it for another 3. In my oven, definitely I needed to do it for a full 23 minutes. And they fluff up, they bake up, they're nice and high. I'm going to go grab one, or actually it's right here. Thank you. So this is a plated breakfast, kind of using that My Plate approach, where you make some of your plate, the produce item on the meal, and then here's our egg bite after it's been cooked, and then some of the whole grain to go with it. Cool.
Yes, question?
Does vegan cheese have salt in it too? I don't know. Would that be an alternative?
It does.
It definitely does.
Vegan cheese will have sodium, and that's why we did the label reading concept, just so people could get a handle. You look for the one that has the lowest number when it comes to sodium. So the lowest number is what you're after for salt, saturated fat, and added sugar.
And we need some salt in our diet, so it's not no salt. It's just that we, don't want to be exceeding that like 2,300 milligrams.
Right.
Can be even a little. The recommendations can go as low as like 2,000, or there was at one point they were saying 1,800 for certain medical conditions, but I think it's more like 2,000. Now it's 2,000 to 2,300.
I wanted to put a plug in for our library. We have a wonderful medical library that's just across the hall, and this is actually a magazine I get. It's called Eating Well, and I love it. It's very evidence-based. It's got recipes too. It kind of merges foodie with nutritionist. They may or may not have that in the library, but I just thought I'd recommend it to people. But this one is in our library. It's an anti-inflammatory meal prep, and they've got one that's anti-inflammatory for beginners, because at the very first class we had a couple questions about inflammation and what kinds of diets can we be doing and using, and it's aspects of the USDA food guidelines, because it's 5 a day for fruits and vegetables and whole grains. The other thing I wanted to comment or ask people about, did anybody try this pickled cabbage in those little shapes that I sent home last time, the little containers? Because every 3 days I tasted a piece of mine just to see if it got more tart or more tangy, and it did. So by day 10 at room temperature, so you can't keep, you have to refrigerate it after day 10. But just know that if you put vinegar into it, it becomes a pickled cabbage, not a sauerkraut. If you leave the vinegar out, then technically it is sauerkraut. And that if you put vinegar in, you will destroy a good portion of the bacteria, but not all of the bacteria. There'll still be probiotics. There's even probiotics in pickles as well as pickled cabbage.
It's still in my fridge from the last meeting, can I still eat it?
Yes, you can. Yeah, about 3 months in the fridge, and I was surprised to learn that. I went online, and USDA had guidelines. How long can I keep a jar of pickles once I've opened it? And it said 3 months, which I have pickles that last. You know what I mean? Like they don't get mold. So I don't know that I follow the right rule, but the rule is after 3 months, throw out the little container of pickled cabbage that I gave everybody last time.
I thought my family kept pickles for years.
I just wanted to draw, as we come to a close on this this third session, I just wanted to draw your attention to the post-program survey that's at the end of your books. If you could, if you have any comments, good or constructive, to make it better, we would love to hear your feedback. If you want to take a few minutes to do that now and leave the feedback form with us, that's fine. Or if you think you're going to be coming back in here in the next couple days, you want to just come back and drop it off, you can certainly do that too. But any feedback that you have would be really helpful so that we can better plan for future events and make sure that we really meet the needs of our community. We don't want to be standing up here telling you things that aren't useful. We really want to be able to make sure we're answering your questions and giving you information that you find that you can use to make yourselves healthier and feel better.
And one of the surveys that came up was, what about grass-fed? So grass-fed beef does have more omega-3, which is an anti-inflammatory type of fat, and it's better for the animal. So I encourage people when they can to buy grass-fed beef. I do think it's slightly better, but it's just slight. There's not a big difference, and ultimately we should be eating less meat. So just thinking of it more of, in the bigger picture, it's not that critical because we could be and should be replacing some of that beef, pork, chicken, fish, or not fish necessarily, but beef, pork, especially with fruits and vegetables and whole grains.
So every Hannaford store has a dietitian who works either in the store or remotely, and they have a lot of really good nutrition information on their website through the Hannaford dietitians. So you can go online, and then you could also submit a question to them, and if you look at the schedule for when they're in the store, they do sometimes they'll be in the store doing a little food demo or something like that. And you can just...
They're a dietitian, I thought they were just paid to serve food.
So there are some of those, yes, there are some of those, but now and again there is a dietitian who will have like a food demo and they'll be focusing on some kind of healthy recipe that you can make using the foods that they can buy in the store, and that person would know specifically about brands and products that are sold in different stores. Yeah.
It was about a year and a half ago, but they do have tours.
Yep.
The dietitian took us through the tops of
Yes.
Hannaford
Yes.
and showed us where the healthy
Yes.
and explained that the gold stars on the labels tells you how healthy the food is. 1 star means this, 2 stars
Yes.
means that.
So the comment is that the Hannaford dietitians, they offer free grocery store tours.
Yep.
And so if you go online and look for the Hannaford dietitian, you can find out when the grocery store tours are occurring. And they will walk you through, explain what the Guiding Stars program is. It's basically I don't know if you've heard of the stop and go, like the green light, red light, and yellow light. There's a bunch of different ways that as health promoters, we try to get information out to the public, and Hannaford has chosen the Guiding Stars program. And so depending on how many stars a food has on it, on the label, that will kind of denote whether that's a healthy food or if it's good for different health conditions.
More stars would be more nutrient dense.
4 stars is more nutrient dense.
More-
More stars, yeah.
I think it's just
Yeah.
3. There's 1, 2.
But the Hannaford dietitian would be able to explain to you what that program is all about. Yes. Yes, Hannaford also does a freebie magazine that's that they have recipes, and they are good recipes. I've used them before too, and they're nice pictures. It's
A little bit of everything, like some vegetarian things.
Yep.
Like cook-off, eat ideal.
Yes, and it's usually kind of corresponding with a time of year. So like in the summertime, they might have one that focuses on cookouts, and in the fall, they'll have probably something that focuses a little bit more on like soups and stuff like that. So yes, those are good resources. Yes.
Can I just, one hint that I use, I find really great, is coleslaw mix, the prepackaged coleslaw mix. You eat it as coleslaw, right? Also, I'll throw that sometimes just in with my green salad, a bit more. But that's great for instant stir fries. If you have leftover meat or chicken or whatever, put the
Or borscht.
Tear the bags open and you've got your stuff all prepped.
Yes, so these pre-cut vegetables are really a lifesaver for a lot of people. They make food prep so much easier, and it's so much easier to increase your fruit and vegetable consumption when the stuff is already cut. Not everybody loves to stand around in the kitchen with the knife and chop up their vegetables. So if you find that that's easier for you, it is a really great way to incorporate more fruits and vegetables.
It's not going to be budget friendly
No, I
though.
was just
It's
gonna
going
That's
to
right.
add cost.
That's right.
time is money.
Yes.
Exactly. Time is money. Yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you.